Now, as you know, I'm very big on before students decide they want to travel overseas that they really need to work on their personal life, work on some of the shortcomings they have, work on any problems which might arise because of mental health issues. I think that all these things need to be tackled with before you even go the route of looking to be placed overseas. Now, if you go through all the steps that we mentioned in the previous videos about figuring out where you would like to be in America, what type of city would you like to be in, or town, rural, do you prefer big cities, small cities, farms, suburbs? There's something for everyone. Like, remember we mentioned in the last video, America has about 4,000 schools, if not more. 4,000 schools. That's a lot of schools. um, Now, of those 4,000 schools, there might be, or don't quote me on this, in terms of international students. I know there's thousands. I'll get the number a little bit later on for you guys, but there's thousands of international students out of the students that are there. With that being said, there is opportunity for you to study. It just depends on the resources you have, how good your grades are, and how you compare with other students. Like we always mention, that there's always a competition between students in all universities. I mean, it's a competition. I like to call it the education game. The thing is, what you don't want to do, you don't want to get caught up in games that really have nothing to do with you, or things that doesn't matter to you anyway. So a lot of people get caught up on this whole prestige thing. They want to make sure they go to a school that's very prestigious so they can show off to their friends. We have to really go now, brothers and sisters, on practicality. What's going to be practical for you and practical for your family? Are you paying out of pocket? Are you getting scholarships? Are you getting grants? Is your Uncle Ali footing the bill? Is the government paying for you? So these questions are going to vary depending on what your situation is. For example, I knew someone that was part of the Air Force of one of the countries, and the Air Force paid for him to go to school in America to do his training, sent his family and everything. So, of course, his concerns might not be the same as an 18-year-old kid who's going and footing the bill himself. The military was paying for him, and he got all his trainings, and he was cool. He didn't have to worry about it. But now, what about the poor 18, 19-year-old student that comes from a country, maybe he's poor, and he's trying to come to America and try his luck in studying? He's academically prepared. He knows what he wants to do, but he might not have the money to do these studies. So what we really need to do is look at ways that our kids are able to come to America and study with least problems. And one of those things is to deal with some of the issues that they're possibly dealing with now. Now, when you get on that school program and you're starting at the earlier ages, middle school, high school, there's two good things. Number one, you get to jump in early and pinpoint what some of the problems are, and you have years to work on them. But number two, you start building a solid foundation and a solid expectation of what happens when you travel. Now, the only negative part is that from middle school to high school and even into college, people are always changing their mind. Especially us men, we change our mind more than anything. I mean, I change my mind now. But for the people that are kind of focused and they know which direction they want to go, they can really start making preparations to get up there and get moving. Now, there are some other ways that you can prepare to go to some of these universities which looks very good on your record. And we didn't mention this before, but one of the issues is internships at companies. They actually do offer some international internships where, for example, maybe if you're into medicine, you might do a medical summer camp at Georgetown University or something like that. Or you may go to Chicago to participate in a political summer camp for students in high school. And they do have these. And believe it or not, there are a lot of international students that participate in that. Of course, the more money you have and the more money at the disposal of your parents, then it's going to be easy for you to do that. But there even are a certain amount of scholarships that they offer for students to come to America to study abroad, even in high school, right? So the opportunities are there. Now, all of these things on your record, internships, high test scores, grades, of course, high level of English. These are things which are going to make it easy for you to get into the university of your choice. Now, say for example you're not the top student. Let's say you're a mediocre student, or you maybe you have a 3.0 or 2.8, and you can't get into some of these places. So what's going to happen is that now you're going to look at the different tiers of you're going to be looking at the different tiers of universities. So remember we mentioned before about the Ivy League universities, how the Ivy Leagues are the high-end universities. And we mentioned what these universities are. We mentioned Harvard, University of Penn, Columbia University, Brown University, Dartmouth, Yale, and Brown. These are what we call the Ivy Leagues. These are like the high-end liberal arts colleges. Now, if you don't get into these, it's okay. There's others below that. But however, sometimes we kind of get a little bit discouraged because all of us want to get into these top name universities, and it's a prestige thing. I went to Harvard, I went to Columbia, I went here. But there are other universities which are just as good for your level that you can go there and achieve the same thing. So you don't want to get too caught up on that. Now, of course, remember, the more high-end these universities are, the more competitive they are. But also another thing is you find that those competitive universities, when they start chasing you, they're usually going to chase you with some money. So at the end of the day, what we want to do is that we want to make sure the students that are capable and the students that are strong, you want to make sure that you're getting the money that you deserve when you go to these schools. It's silly for a student who has a 4.0 or even higher than a 4.0 and great grades not to apply for financial aid to see what kind of money is available for them. Now, it could be a full scholarship, it could be partial, depends on what your financial situation is, and it depends on what your program looks like. But I know for a fact that straight A students and students that have great marks and great essays and great English, they generally get into the universities that they want to get into. Now, there's an added piece of that for the international student, because the international student, he or she has to do more preparation. Why? Because not only are they navigating getting into school, they have to find out where they're going to live, how they're going to get there, how often can they come home, all of these things. So this is really a serious situation here once you get to that level. So let's say, for example, you live in Greece, all right? And I don't know the situation with Greece, politics, whatever, but you're in Greece. You get into University of South Carolina, for example, and you're in, and maybe you even get a partial scholarship. Now you're figuring out getting over there, visas and things like that. Do you have family members over there that you can go there to visit? And I strongly believe that if you're going to be putting that much money aside to go to school, at the very least, you should be able to save up, get some money, and take a trip to these universities to see if it's a fit for you. I mentioned before how as a Chinese family one time came and they were doing a whole tour of America and they were visiting different colleges. Everybody doesn't have the money to do that, but the ones that do, it makes sense for you to go and to find out where you would possibly want to study. So I think that it's important for you just to lay out all your options and be going at that right. So just to reiterate, two things we're going into where we have a layout of where we think we want to go. Looking at some things that we can do even before then. We start talking about interns. We start talking about maybe traveling and visiting these countries, narrowing down the location where we want to be. making sure that we're mentally healthy before we actually hop on that plane. These are things that are gonna put us in a good situation. Um, Other things we're gonna start talking about. We're really gonna start going into detail about some of these American colleges and what they're about, and what some of them expect. And we could even start looking at statistics on, what's the graduation rate and this, that, whatever. But here's how I look at statistics a lot of times. A lot of people study statistics that have nothing to do with them. So, for example, some people look at the school and say, oh, they have great grades and the students have this much graduation rate, this, that, whatever. That's good. But remember, those are their stats. They're not your stats. You could very well go over there and flunk out. And I'm just being honest. Not that I want that for you, but things have happened. People have gone to great universities. They thought that it was easy, or as we say in America, they thought it was sweet, and they end up getting bounced out of there. We've seen it plenty of times. I've seen family members of mine go to university. They took it too easy, was having fun, having a big old party, and what happened at the end of the day? They got bounced out of there. So you don't want to be in a situation where they bounce you out of there like a basketball, bounce, 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 bounce. Get out of here. We don't want that. We want to make sure you're going there, you're getting good fit, you finish, and either you come back to your country and serve your people or stay in America, whatever you decide to do. There are many options out there. But to let you know that there are many options, right? Now, remember we said we're talking about 4,000 universities, all right? 4,000 universities. Out of some of those universities, you definitely will be able to find a match for yourself. And remember those elites. And if you really want to know which universities are the best universities, if you're big on prestige or whatever, just type into Google the top 100 universities in America or the top 100 engineering colleges in America, the top 100 medical schools in America, whatever you want to do. And you can find out the stats, if that's important to you, and you can find out of your major, which is the best one. Now, here's another thing you have to understand. I've seen schools that haven't really ranked the best of schools, but they might have a program or two which is high. So I knew a friend one time, he wanted to study environmental science. And the school that he went, he got accepted into the school that he went to. I think it might have been Michigan or something. And then he also got accepted to Yale. He decided that he wanted to do Michigan because Michigan's environmental science program, I think, was better or something like that. Or maybe they offer more resources. Whatever it is, he felt more comfortable. Now, some people look at him like, well, why would you turn down Yale and go to Michigan? But when you start getting to the higher level and you start peeling back, you start peeling back the onion, as we say, you start figuring out, okay, there's some underlying things there. Maybe Michigan was giving more support. Maybe Yale's program was new. Who knows? But there's everything for somebody. Right? Everything for somebody. My old university, my old college, was giving away what we call land grant scholarships. And these scholarships were for students who wanted to study agriculture, agribusiness, urban forestry, and other sciences. This school is a mid-tier school, but they offer a full ride for in-state and out-state students to participate in the agriculture program, which is a great agriculture program. So the goal definitely is to be able to come out of school with as little debt as possible. And we have these programs that have been popping up that have been giving these full rides to some of these kids. And what happens oftentimes? Oftentimes, these scholarships get left on the table all the time. People don't take advantage of them, especially international students, because international students really aren't, they might not be privy to everything that's going on in terms of the scholarship process. Some people think that, well, I'm not eligible for that because I'm not an American citizen. And I kid you not, I've seen hundreds of scholarships that were eligible for domestic and international students. So there goes that myth out the window that if you're an international student, you can't get these scholarships. And they're there for you. So I'm going to show you how to get into those. That's going to be a whole separate lecture, because that's important in itself. What financials are available for international students? All right. What can you do? I mean, is there money out there? Do you want to go into the situation where you got to get a loan from a bank and then you have to pay back? And that's another thing which jams a lot of students in America up. I really feel that if you're a good student, You should be able to go to a university in America without having to pay an exorbitant amount of debt when you're done. But the problem is what happens is that a lot of parents and kids are so lazy, especially here in America, that the minute they get into a school, they just automatically just think, oh, I just have to apply for loans and get the money from the bank, this, that, whatever. Whereas there's scholarships sitting them right in the, looking them right in the face, and they're not taking advantage of it. So you want to make sure that we're taking advantage of these scholarships, even for the international students. This is primarily what I'm going to try to connect you guys with, finding out what these scholarships are. How do we get to it? What are the deadlines? How many international students are they accepting? And when you're looking at your schools, one thing that's always good to do is look at the diversity of the school. How many international students are there? How many students from your country are there? I've seen some schools where maybe you might have a school, maybe have 100 Saudi students or 200 French students or 300 British students. And that might be something you want. Might be something you don't want. But at least you'll be able to look through and look at some of these numbers. And then you can use that to put into your pot when you're talking about, okay, which schools you want to choose, which schools you don't want to choose. Now, I generally tell people they should apply to about 10 to 15 schools. Maybe for international, I would say maybe 15 to 20, just because, maybe the competition is going to be a little stiffer. Remember that you do have some colleges and universities that have free applications. You have quite a few of those. We mentioned the other day about the Common App, which is an application for about over 400 colleges in America. They use the same application, so you don't have to fill out the application 100 times to get that. So we do have the Common App. So there are ways that we can streamline and make this process a little bit easier for you. So once again, we're going to take a look at that, and we're going to go into these things just to bring you from point A to point B, so we can get you studied in America. Now, remember that once you get to America, the journey's not done. And now you have to do the work, and that's another thing. One of the major reasons I see kids drop out of school is, number one, they're homesick, or number two, they underestimated the rigor, the amount of work they had to do. And we're going to go into that as well when we start looking at some of the schools in our country. Some of us come from countries where the schools are pretty good. Others, they may be bad. They might not prepare you. All right. So the last thing you want to do is come to America. You had great marks in the country you were at. Then you come to America and you can't keep up because you didn't prepare yourself. And I've seen that happen as well. And what is the major barrier going to be? It's going to be the English language. Even if you speak it or not, English could be a bit difficult depending on the city that you're at and who you're around. And then it's one thing to talk, but then it's one thing to do research papers and projects in English. Now, the days of the research papers, they're here, but it's not as hard as it used to be. You have to, go to the library, do these things. A lot of these kids just they Google Translate. But remember, having a good control of the English language is going to be important for you to move forward in the educational journey. Last but not least, if you have a crew of friends and you guys are looking to study overseas, share resources with each other. Help each other out. Maybe you guys might not want to go to the same university, but you might find universities, within close proximity of each other. So let's say, for example, you may look at a city like Philadelphia, which is a city in the state of Pennsylvania on the East Coast. Philadelphia has so many great universities there. Temple University, St. Joe's, Villanova. What else? Let me see. Swarthmore, Haverford. Bunch of schools there that you can go to and you can benefit from. Cheney, Lincoln, and then a million and a bunch of other community colleges and things like that. So maybe, for example, you might have a friend that might go to Chestnut Hill College, for example, which is on one end of the city, and then another friend might go to Villanova, which is maybe like a 20-minute drive, half-hour drive. So if you have friends, maybe you guys might want to be kind of like in the same area. And it depends that if you want that. But I also warned you guys before about applying to the schools, you and your friends all applying to the same schools, because one of you might get in, the other one might not. And that's a quick way to end a friendship. So I would say look at all these things. Look at the background of these places. Make sure that it's a great fit for you. Make sure it's a great fit for your family. Make sure that you're financially able to handle this. Because if not, you're going to put yourself in a worse situation than you were before. All right. So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to sign off. Check out for the next session. This is just Talking Tuesdays. We're just throwing some, going through some points that I might have just come up during the end of the week. It's nothing real formal, but just hopefully that this will help you on your journey to study in America. Pretty soon what's going to happen is we're going to have our seminars coming soon. We're looking at touching down in several countries, starting with the Middle East and Africa, and then maybe shooting over some other places, maybe Asia and places like that. We're going to try to get some in-person seminars where we're answering some questions and getting a lot of things down. All right. Thank you for your support. Comment, like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll talk to you later. And thank you for coming through and supporting Belgrave College.